Hello, everyone.
Hello, this is Debbie.
Hi, Debbie.
I guess I should start my video, huh? Or did y'all want everyone to?
Whatever you prefer, Debbie.
Okay.
I'm just about
Danielle, I
to.
like your background.
Well, thank you. It's kind of, yeah, the way that it's set up. I had to get it in the right position.
Yeah, I like it because the research part shows and the woman. So women research. I like it.
Hopefully, my hair is not. Okay, let me do this to where.
Hopefully. Oh, let me turn off my work cell because that might go off.
Let's see. Okay, I'm just letting a couple of more people in the room
Okay.
and going live. It's such a task.
Come on.
Okay, let some more people in.
I think. Okay. I think that's how you do it.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi
Judith. How are you doing?
there. I'm good. Nobody
Okay.
can see Tasha. Why?
Oh, um,
Is that is that is that mommy?
Yeah, that's me.
Hi. Hi, mommy.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
OMG.
Okay.
Well, I
Gotta love the parents. I love the support. Yeah.
My cousin is here too.
Okay. All right, we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Danielle Cole. I am the CEO and founder of Black Women in Clinical Research. The mission of Black Women in Clinical Research is to educate, empower, support, and help Black women thrive in the clinical research industry. So, tonight we have an interesting topic: mental health and the cost of being a strong Black woman. A lot of times we carry a lot of weight when it comes to being a strong Black woman. We have to be strong for our families. We have to be strong for our community. We have to be strong at our job. So a lot of times it's so much pressure to hold it all together and be strong for everyone. But a lot of times when you're strong for everyone else, what about you? You kind of miss out on taking care of yourself. So tonight we have Dr. Tashi Francis. I have known Tashi since it's going on, I want to say 20 years that Tashi and I have
Yes.
known each other. Freshman year of college at Clark Atlanta University. Shout out to the CAU Panthers. Ware Hall. But see, when you start to say how long you've known a person, then you start to tell your age.
I was just gonna say that.
So that's a lot of times what happens. And just quick little story, what Tashi and I used to do is just, to me, just the funniest thing. And every time I think about Tashi, I think about how when we were in college and we were broke college students, and so we would switch off on week to week on who would cook. So Tashi would cook Jamaican meals for the whole week for me, and then I would cook. I remember Tashi's favorite was my lasagna. So we definitely,
Yes.
and it worked too. So I'm just I'm just gonna let Tashi go ahead and introduce herself.
Okay. Thank you, Danielle. So just FYI, the lasagna used to be so good. And I'm not used to being Jamaican, my family never made lasagna and spaghetti. So I became used to eating lasagna and spaghetti when I got to college. I was like, what is this? So, I'm like really culturally Jamaican. So anyway, I don't want to take up too much time, but just a little bit about me. So my name is Toshi Francis, Dr. Francis. I am a clinical licensed social worker. I am licensed in New York and in New Jersey. I'm also a psychologist. pending my license. But I went to Clark Atlanta with Danielle. I went to Adelphi University, and I also went to Capella University and completed my PhD studies. So a little bit about my background. I've worked for the state of New York. I've worked in Rhode Island for Rhode Island Hospital and Hasbro Children's Hospital. I've worked for a couple of nonprofits in the healthcare sector, managing a lot of their portfolios pertaining to mental health. And I'm currently, during the pandemic, I took a job with the federal government. So currently I'm working for the Department of Veterans Administration, and I am working with clients on mental health and particularly veterans, and, you know, getting our veterans back to the treatment that they really need, right? So I just want to talk about, why did I become a therapist? So why did I become a therapist, and why did I decide to go in to get a PhD? So I became a therapist because, for me, I grew up in Southside Jamaica, Queens, for any of you guys who are familiar with New York. And there was a lot of challenges that I realized a lot of people faced in my community, especially my colleagues that I was going to high school with. And there was a lot of trouble they would get themselves into. So I decided that, you know, I wanted to do something to help my community. So I decided to become a therapist, and I went to Clark, majored in psychology, and then went off to Adelphi and did social work, and then a PhD in psychology. So one of the interesting things about the topic, so Danielle gave the title, The Cost of Being a Strong Black Woman. So one of the things that stands out from that particular title is that strong word. As Black women, as African-American women, or whatever way we want to look at ourselves as women in general, we always think to ourselves, I have to put on that face, or I have to, you know, show that, you know, I can handle everything, and carry that superhero syndrome, right? And I could say, as a therapist in the field, this happens with a lot of my patients. A lot of them, they come to therapy and they say, you know, I struggle with understanding who I am because I'm always carrying everyone else. I'm always carrying that strong title because, you know, there's nobody else that can help the family. But we'll talk a little bit more about that and how that applies to like COVID. A lot of times when we as women take on that strong title, it leads to heart disease. From my experience of being in the field, so I work in behavioral health and also I work with primary care. A lot of my patients who are seen in mental health, they end up having to be seen in primary care because of the fact, like, they're dealing with heart disease, they're dealing with diabetes, they're dealing with a substance abuse issue, because they carry that burden of being that strong African-American or Black woman. Danielle also had some questions where people were asking about medication. So is it important? Is that what you was asking, Danielle? What someone had asked about medication? Is it important to take meds?
I think they wanted to know the side effects, and kind of they were having some type of side effects to their medication. So they wanted to know more about, I guess, do you have side effects with taking medication for mental health?
Okay. So from my experience, I'm not a psychiatrist, nor am I a psychiatric nurse practitioner. So I'm a psychologist, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. But I can tell you from my experience of being in the mental health field. So I would say that a lot of times from my experience, you see a lot of patients dealing with side effects. And a lot of times I find, and I'm speaking the truth from like where my experience, because I'm going to keep it real with you guys. I find that it really depends on the person who's the prescriber. So if you and that prescriber have that connection, you are able to receive the appropriate dosage, for one, and then also you're able to openly state what is going on with you as it pertains to the prescription that is being prescribed to you. When I find that, for example, I had a patient, this was about 2 years ago, she was dealing with chronic major depressive disorder. So I'm say chronic, but chronic PTSD, but major depressive disorder without psychotic features. But she was dealing with a lot of trauma that had happened in the past. She wasn't stabilized. And the PNP that I was working with, me and her worked together to help stabilize this patient. In the past, she dealt with other psychiatrists and she was like, no, I don't really want to take medication. But once she started working with us, the PNP worked with her and asked her, so tell me a little bit more about what were the side effects that you experienced? Tell me a little bit more about what were the medications that you took? And that helped her in a sense, because once she had a better understanding of like what medications worked for her and what medications did not work for her, she was able to stabilize. Now I spoke to her maybe like a month ago. She's able to be off the medication. She's able to function better in the community. Another issue that I find with medications is that a lot of psychiatrists, or PNPs, and sometimes like the physicians, they don't want to take the patient off of the medication for, financial reasons. Like they get kickbacks, and yes, a lot of doctors do get kickbacks from the medication that they prescribe. So they may keep the patient on that medication. And that's something even I would say is important to talk to the provider about and let them know, like, hey, I see the improvement. I'm going to therapy, and taking medication and coupling it with therapy is strongly important, I would say, in my recommendation, because medication should not be where you're just taking medication and then you're not speaking about what the feelings are that applies to the medication that you're taking. I know there's going to be more questions on that, so I don't want to go too much in depth. And then Danielle asked me to speak about seeking treatment and seeking therapy. So I would say for you to seek therapy, it's really important that you build a bond with a person, a provider that you are going to seek therapy with. One of the main things that I find with mental health, a lot of people will go to therapy and they don't really feel that connection with that person, or they don't feel that they can formulate a bond. One way that you can do that, and I always stress this to like all patients, even when they call me and they're doing a 15-minute consultation, I ask them, I say, tell me a little bit about your symptoms. Tell me a little bit about what's going on right now for you. And then I look at my experience and can I help that particular person, or not even help, but assist them in what they're dealing with. A lot of times things are out of my scope. So if it's out of my scope, I'm referring you to someone else that is more experienced in that particular area. So you will have, and I would say particularly with COVID happening right now, you might have a lot of therapists that would say, yes, I'm trying to fill my caseload, but it's really important for you as the patient or client seeking out therapy to have someone that you feel you can be comfortable with, one, and then also two, they can work through the symptoms that you're experiencing, and they have the experience and the techniques that can be used to help you through those symptoms that you're experiencing. And I'm going to stop for a second. Danielle, do you have any questions?
So I guess with COVID, what are some of the symptoms and what are some of the situations that people have been going through? What have you noticed the most, and how with COVID, what is the best way to kind of, I know that a lot of people have been affected by COVID. A lot of family members have, passed on, and we're kind of in this dark place. So what do you suggest for people that's going through personal issues? Because even though we are collectively, going through this as a community, and I guess as the world is going through this, how do you in your personal life kind of deal with what's going on? Like, say, for example, if you lose your job, because of COVID, and now you're not the provider, how do you go through these steps to make sure that you are okay mentally?
All right, Danielle loaded it on me. All right. So The first thing I will say, so I work in private practice, and then I also work my, regular 9 to 5, 8 to 4 job. So coming into this situation, and I would say this from being a provider. So COVID, I saw the numbers were going up. We were in the clinic. This was my former job. We're in the clinic. You see the numbers going up. People are kind of wary about, like, should they come to the clinic to be seen? Should they not come to the clinic be seen? From my experience, I just felt like my particular clinic, they didn't really respond the way they needed to respond, but that's neither here or there. But when it applies to COVID, it really ties down to establishing a routine, right? Establishing a routine for yourself, because if you think about COVID happened and it just came down on us in March, and people didn't really know what to do. School shut down. Our jobs were like, okay, hey, take all of this home, right? So people were like, well, what am I supposed to do? Right. And especially when it applies to us as women, it's like, all right, so I know I'm the person that may be the only one that take care of the kids. I may be the only one that, take care of the laundry. I'm the only one that take care of going to the grocery store. So a lot of times it was like, okay, what am I supposed to do next? And then now I have family members passing away. Right now I have, maybe my personal family member inside my house is suffering from COVID. My biggest thing, and I tell like my patients when we're still going through it, I told them the first thing you need to do is establish a routine, because what happens is you don't end up losing yourself when you start to establish a routine. Also, maintaining a healthy lifestyle. So making sure that you're exercising, eating healthy, even if you're exercising and you're exercising in the home, right? Making sure you're going to sleep at a certain time. So if you know that you're supposed to be at work, or the child is supposed to start school at a certain time, making sure the child is still going to bed at that time, making sure that you're going to sleep at that time, if you can. And I'm going to be realistic. That's if you can, because I also have a 7-year-old. So that's if you can, but still trying to stay close to that schedule so that you do not lose track of, what you're doing. And then also staying socially connected. During COVID, like at the heart of COVID in March, one of the things I said to my patients were, tell me a little bit more about your social circle. So we were working on all of these techniques and things that they were going through, but my biggest thing in March was, tell me a little bit about your social circle. I need to know who's around you, who you're in contact with, who can be of support for you, especially for my patients who they live alone. So there is nobody else. It's just them, right? They don't have any kids, right? They don't have family members that live in the state of New York. So I had to establish what was going on around you. Who do you have around you? One of my patients, every Friday, she goes to one of her co-workers' house and they watch a movie, but they socially distance. And then another thing and these are things that we spoke about. There's a nearby park, Riverside Park. So it's a big park. So she could socially distance, where she sits at one bench and the other person sits at another bench, and they could be able to have a conversation. So that's ways to keep yourself socially connected. Also, some of my patients, they did like Zoom calls with playing games on the calls. And a lot of them, they're like, I never thought about that. Like playing chess on Zoom with, maybe my uncle or my cousin, and even putting the kids on Zoom. My daughter, her classmates, they'll go on Zoom like every other day, and they'll have conversations and play games and play with their dolls so that they can kind of still stay socially connected. And then one of the biggest things I would also recommend is creating a self-care toolkit. Creating a self-care toolkit, not only for yourself, but every single individual inside of the household, especially your kids. That might include meditation. That might include guided imagery, talking to a professional about what's going on or what you're feeling, and engaging in a hobby or doing yoga. When it applies to therapy, also, one of the things I didn't mention, if you are working in the work environment, EAP is usually within your organization. I know some people are like, I don't want these people knowing my business. I don't want them to know that I'm struggling, because then they might try to use that on my performance evaluation. If you feel comfortable with the person who runs EAP, I strongly recommend that you do seek that person out and let them know, hey, I just want to, get a couple of sessions in, because that's your company paying for that, as opposed to you having to use your health insurance. I find that a lot of clients who use EAP, a lot of times they're able to work through the concerns or issues that they're dealing with within that short period, short time span, as opposed to not working through it at all. I know that was a lot. And then also, so during COVID, I lost my job. So I went into work. This was like March 30th, went into work, and they were like, oh, we no longer need your services. So I also work as a professor. So I ended up falling back on my professor job, staying at home for about 6 months. And then I went and started working for the VA, which is a blessing. And I know for some people, they lost their jobs as well. So how do you stay socially connected? How do you deal with the fact that there's no income coming in, or, your significant other has no income coming in? A lot of people go towards prayer, and then a lot of times people go towards opening their own companies. I know for me and Danielle had a conversation. I think this was like in August, and Danielle called me and she was like, I'm dealing with like some struggles with my job, and I'm trying to figure out what is it next that I'm going to do. And I was like, Danielle, you have the skills, you have the width. I was like, you know what you need to do? Open your own company. And that's what she did. And here we are now during COVID. Go ahead, Danielle, if you got any questions.
So what about like FMLA? Like, can you speak on FMLA? Because, a lot of times with COVID and, working, at your job, and say, for example, if you had a job where you were going into work every day and now you have to work from home and things have changed, and just the stress of that. And, what do you recommend for someone who's considering, going on FMLA? And a lot of people don't know that, I guess you can speak on this also, that if you are going through, I don't know how to call this, but a personal or depressive state, that you can claim FMLA.
Yes. So when it applies to FMLA, you can use FMLA for your mental health needs. You don't have to say to your employer, oh, I'm going out on FMLA for mental health. You could just say, I'm going out on FMLA for health reasons. So you don't have to technically say, like, what is your reasoning for going out? A lot of times, let me pull back. So it also depends on your state. So here in New York, you're able to go out on FMLA and be protected. I believe they have to protect your job, because we have FMLA, but then we have something else called paid family leave. And I think that's for 3 months. And then you got FMLA after the paid family leave. So it's like almost like 6 months you're able to be out. You have the ability to do that. Some people don't feel comfortable about it because they feel that if I go out, then that means I might lose my job. You're supposed to be protected. This is federal regulation. You are protected against them having someone else go into your job. One of my friends who also had asked me about FMLA, because she was dealing with some struggles at her job, she went out on FMLA. The job decided that they were going to place someone in her role while she was out on FMLA. She ended up gaining compensation for that. She got like almost $50,000 because they placed someone in her position when she was out on FMLA. It was for mental health reasons, but they cannot do that. If you know that you're struggling, you know that it's a lot, you feel like I can't do it. Like, this is just too much for me, especially during COVID. And I'm not going to lie, we all go through it. Me, even as a therapist, like, I will go through it. I have my off days and my good days. So if I was to feel a certain way, my job already know, and I just started working there. Yeah, I need a day. I need to use my time. Another thing to take into consideration, because we're in COVID, there's a regulation where you can use COVID time. I don't remember the terminology, but it's like a time that you can use if it's like a COVID related illness that happened to you or your family member. You can use that time. I think it's up to a week. You can use that time and they have to still pay you your full check. But you only can use it for during this time of COVID. You only can use it one time.
So Tashi, earlier, well, Dr. Tashi.
Fine. Listen, I'm fine. You can call me Tashi.
I gotta give you all, I gotta give it all to you, So like how do you go about, I know we talked about being strong. How do you go about removing that or starting to work through and realizing that you don't like, what are the necessary steps that you take to kind of like, I don't know, almost like lay down your hair and so you don't have to feel like you have to be strong all the time? Like what are some things that you can do to kind of, release all that stress? Because a lot of times when you're strong, it's built up and you like, I got to be strong every day. And so, how do you do that?
So you mean for me or just in general as a
anyone, how do they kind of, get over, or I shouldn't say get over, but kind of knowing that they don't always have to be strong? Are there any kind of tools or techniques or like what they should be focusing on?
I strongly recommend going to your clergy, seeking, because some people, they don't feel that therapy is for them, but I strongly recommend it. Like I said before, I strongly recommend it because it a lot of times works for a lot of women. A lot of my patients who have never considered therapy but decided to consider it because someone referred them to me, or the person told them about me, and they're like, man, I should have came to therapy a long time ago. I strongly, because it gives you the opportunity to not have to feel like you're so strong. And even in therapy, like I challenge a lot of my clients who may come in as women and they're like, but I have to maintain this mask. I have to maintain like this strong figure. And like I explained to them, in therapy, you can be you, and in hopes that you can transition to doing that when you're on the outside. Not saying that you should not, hold yourself to a certain regard. And, because I will also say, as a African-American woman, as a Black woman, a lot of times you might feel like if I pulled back, then people are not going to respect me. So those are also the challenges that, we as Black women may face, the microaggressions, and then also, but learning to balance it and knowing that, you have a support system, you have a therapist or someone your clergy that can be behind you to help you and guide you through those struggles that you might face of having to put on that mask or feeling like you have to take on a whole lot.
So a lot of times also too, when people deem you as that strong woman and when you're assertive, then you speak up, you get labeled as the angry Black woman. How do you deal with people kind of thinking that you're an angry Black woman just because you stood up for yourself?
It's finding balance. I will say, you as a woman finding balance in the sense of, who you are. And that's one thing. And I tell, even in therapy, I always say to a lot of my patients, understand self first, because when you understand self, then you could be able to understand how you are going to put yourself out there with the world. So a lot of times when it comes to the work environment, there is always someone, and I'm going to say, there's always someone, I've been through it. Maybe a lot of you guys have been through it. Oh, the way she says that, or she articulated herself, she sounds like she's angry. When in a sense, it's really that a person is being assertive, not really being angry, but they may be saying the same thing like their other counterpart that does not look like us, maybe saying something, but it's considered like, oh, well, you're coming off as argumentative. And I think the best thing for you to do is, express to the group or express to the people around you, like, I'm concerned because you guys are saying that I'm saying this as like I'm upset, but I'm more so trying to, you know, give my feedback. A lot of times it may not work. It may not work for the company. It may not work for the team, because as a African American woman, as a Black woman, they might see you as a challenge, or they might see you as a person who should not be in certain positions. So that in itself, that it's a big issue overall. So it's not easy to, because we had that, it comes also with the microaggressions, you know, natural hair. That also comes with the challenges of people not wanting to see you in certain positions. And I also would recommend, because as a senior director in my prior job, mentorship, having a mentor, having an executive coach. That's one of my biggest things that I recommend. I had an executive coach when I worked as a senior director, because I dealt with challenges also on the job. You know, I have a young face, I look young, you know, people see it as a challenge of like, why is this person in this particular position? And then on top of it, she's Black. Having an executive coach and somebody that can be there to support you, aside from having a therapist, is also helpful. And a lot of times you might have people who you work with who are in senior leadership who also have executive coaches.
You said you wanted to do an exercise. Are we still doing the?
No, I'm not going to do an exercise. Okay, I can take questions if anything.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take questions. If anyone has any. Someone said,
Right.
y'all just may be making me so laugh so hard. I just be. Someone said, speaking of natural hair, Danielle curls popping. Just FYI. Thank you.
They are.
Thank you, Rochelle. Thank you.
I told her earlier, I was like, your hair is nice today.
Y'all so funny. And it's funny too, my father is here. So he sent me a message saying, good evening, Danielle. You look lovely tonight.
Hi, Dad.
So it's always important to have, you know, since we're talking about this, it's always important to have family support. Tashi's mom's here. My dad's here.
My cousin is here.
Your cousin. Okay, so we have a question. Any advice for seeking a mentor at executive leadership level?
Advice in like where to go, or
how to find a mentor, I guess, at an executive leadership level.
I would say LinkedIn, and then also on IG. So one of my friends, Marjorie Briffle, she's an executive coach. She's also an image consultant. And we went to grad school together. She's the one that led me to realize that I needed to have an executive coach, because of the fact, like, I work in mental health. And then one of the things, like, working in mental health, that you also realize the people that you work with got their own mental health issues. And you're like, okay, how do I deal with this? And then I've found that a therapist a lot of times can't handle that issue. So I might need someone who will understand the business aspect of things and help to coach me and help me to understand those microaggressions, help me to understand when I'm speaking and I'm voicing my opinion, that I'm voicing it and it's not something that's coming off as aggressive, but more so of assertive. I don't know if any of you guys know about Minda Hart, Mida Hart. She wrote the memo. She talks a lot about like working in the business world and dealing with the microaggressions that come across when you, as a Black woman, African American woman, is in leadership. So check her out if you want. But like I said, I think looking at LinkedIn, you can always do like an executive coach search. But one of the things I also would recommend, because one of my patients, she has me and then she also has an executive coach, ask questions. Like, ask this executive coach, I know and you are spending money and you want to make sure that this executive coach is giving you the tools that you need for you to be successful in life. Another thing is you can also think about using your health insurance, because that executive coach might be a social worker or a psychologist. So you can use your health insurance for that, because you're finding that a lot more mental health providers are going into coaching along with being a therapist.
Okay, so this was one question that someone had sent me. They wanted to know, how do you cope with everything that's going on? Her husband lost his job. Her son had a car accident Saturday night. She says she does not like her job anymore, and a good coworker of hers is fighting for her life. How
Okay.
does she navigate all of that?
So wait, her husband lost his job. Her son got in a car accident.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
She does not like her job, and a good coworker is fighting for her life. So she wants to know, how do you cope with everything that's going on? Like when life is hitting you all at one time.
The first thing that I would recommend is getting grounded. So grounded meaning pulling yourself away from everyone. And if you got to go into like a deep meditation, sitting with yourself, processing, journaling. And I'm saying this based off of my experiences also with some of my patients. They've gone through the loss of a job. Well, like 3 of my patients, they went through the loss of their job. And I try not to leave them out there when we work out a pay scale so that they can continue to have treatment. But getting yourself grounded and then looking at how do I address all that has just happened? So what is it that I need to prioritize first? So my husband lost his job. My son got in a car accident. I don't like my job. My good coworker is fighting for her life. All of these areas are important to me. You was gonna say something, Danielle?
No.
Oh, all of these areas are important to me, but what can I work on first? Right? Can I be that person where my good coworker is fighting for her life and being supportive and checking in on her, maybe for like a half an hour each day, right? Even if it's a Zoom call, depending on where her location is, right? Son got in a car accident, checking in on her son, finding out from him, how is he feeling? What's going on? What are some of the things that he's feeling from being in that car accident? What is it that she can do to assist him? But then, like, going back to being that strong Black woman, prioritizing all of these different things, having a schedule. All right, for this time frame, this is when I'm going to do this. This is a time frame I'm going to check in with my son. This is a time frame that I'm going to check in with my coworker, right? And then with regards to, she does not like her job, and then also her husband lost his job. So with regards to that, the first thing, and listen, even Danielle can co-sign with me saying this. If you don't like your job, the biggest thing that I say, no, you can't leave. Not all the time. Not everybody can leave their job, but figure out what is your niche. And I'm saying this because I heard this when I was at Clark, and I majored in psychology, but I also minored in business. And one of the things that my professors always used to say in B school was, find out what is your niche. And like I said to you guys, so I work a 9-to-5 quote unquote job, but then I also have a private practice. So you have to figure out, what is your niche? What makes you tick? What makes you happy? What makes you want to do what you do in life? Maybe it might be that you want to work a 9-to-5 job, right? Because entrepreneurship is not for you. So then figuring out what company would be for you and what it is that you need to do. Maybe you might need to take a certificate class. Maybe you might need to have an executive coach to help you, guide you through that transition from that one job to the next job. Maybe you might need someone to look at your resume to get you on that path for you to change jobs. And then when it comes to your husband, sitting down with your husband, but this is all with prioritizing your day and still being able to spend that time with yourself. Sitting down with your husband and figuring out, okay, what is it that you would like to do? And what is it that we could do to adjust to what the changes are going on around us? You got some, you want to say something, Danielle?
No.
Oh, okay. But figuring out what are like how can we adjust to those changes with you losing your job? Is there something that you probably would like to do? You know, and then also with the issue that I'm noticing that's happening with regards to COVID, there's a lot of ageism issues. So you have a lot of companies that don't want to hire because of the age of the person, right? If you're over the age of 50, a lot of companies are like, no, I don't want to hire you. So those are also some challenges that I'm noticing. Go ahead, Danielle.
Oh, nothing. My phone fell, so you're fine. I didn't want to
No.
interrupt you.
All right. So you have another question for me?
So one person said, "Are you taking new patients?"
No, I can't take no. Listen, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I don't know if you realize that's something also that I wanted to talk about with therapy. Therapists are booked. Like when I mean booked, booked. I don't know what it is in this field like we're gonna do to get over that, but it's like a lot of therapists are overbooked. But like I said before, if you're gonna seek out a therapist, you definitely have to make sure that you have that relationship, you feel like you can connect, and also with a psychiatrist, because when it comes to medication, from my experience, you will have a lot of psychiatrists where they'll put you on all of these meds. And even with my clients that I have, I'll ask them, tell me all of the meds that you're on, medical and mental health. And then I'll call, this sounds crazy, but I will call their psychiatrist and their PMPs and ask them, when's the last time you did a medication reconciliation, to really look at their medication and see what is effective and what is not effective for that particular client. Because sometimes these medications they can counteract with one another, as a lot of you guys know who are in clinical research.
Does anyone have any more questions?
No questions?
Let's see. Okay, well, I'll just ask a question. Do you feel like with COVID and everything, is there a particular business or a typical career that you feel like has been affected the most with COVID-19? Like which career or as far as has been mostly affected with the mental health and, seeking treatment?
I would say our restaurant workers. They've been impacted greatly, and actors. So I've had a number of people who work in the restaurant industry, and then also that work as actors on many of the TV shows that you guys watch, and I watch too. In the backs, they work in the back scene. They're not able to go back to work, and then they are trying to work on getting unemployment extended, and then they have children and they have their husbands, wives, and they struggle with. And then even with I know here in New York, the restaurants are closing at 10 o'clock. So some restaurants open at like 6 and then they close at 10 o'clock. So it's hard for these waiters and waitresses to make earnings. So how do I help them or assist them, I would say, in their treatment? So like I said, looking for other avenues. Some of my clients, they have credentials, like with regards to like degrees and stuff like that. So the restaurant jobs was like their side hustle. So a lot of them, they've created other hustles. So a lot of people have been writing books. A lot of people have been starting their own company. Some start their own publishing company. Some starting their own like sneaker, graphic design. One of my clients, she started her own consulting firm that focuses more on like construction. So she works in the restaurant industry part-time, but now she started a consulting firm that focuses more on construction and giving her feedbacks and consulting skills on working in real estate and construction.
So how, I guess, with people who are in the medical field, like the doctors and the nurses and everything, how do they really kind of cope with what's going on, what they're seeing, and what they're kind of dealing with on a day-to-day basis?
I would say it has to do with I'm saying this based off of my experience, and I would say from my experience, and then also like with a lot of my colleagues who are doctors in the field, medical doctors, psychiatrists, ER doctors, a lot of them, they are using their friends and they're using their coworkers as their support system. A lot of them are a lot of them are doing like Zoom calls. Some people, they haven't seen their parents or their family members in almost a year. We're going into close to a year of them not seeing like their family members. So how they cope is they are doing Zoom calls. They are, contacting their friends, going to therapy. You have so many more clients who are not clients, but primary care doctors and nurses and that are going into treatment. Some people are buying books. This one doctor, and I feel so bad for her. So her father died when we were in COVID in March. Her father died the 3rd week of March, and then her mother died the 4th week of March. So the last week of March. So both her parents died within a 2-week time span, right? Due to COVID. So how is she? And then she accepted a position at Harvard. So she moved from New York, went to Harvard. All of these different changes happen within her life. So how does she cope? She's in therapy. She's also reading about grief. You have a lot of times, and this is something that I also wanted to touch on, grief with regards to COVID. You have a lot of people that would say, oh, you still dealing with that loss, like of a family member or a friend passing away. It is okay. Okay. Listen to what I'm saying. It is okay to grieve. You might grieve this person for the rest of your life, but when you're grieving, it's in the hopes as a therapist, we want you to at least be able to understand what you're grieving through, and then also to feel comfort in your grief. So remembering that person. Some people will say, well, why would you put up like a picture? And I'm saying this because these are things that a lot of my patients go through. I have one patient where her family member died this year during COVID, and you will have like some friends that would say to her, and which we talked about last week, well, why are you still grieving, your father passing away? You don't think that's like something like, he's gone, just deal with it. Of course not. This is a family member. This is a close person. And depending on the connection that I had, of course, I'm going to still be coping with it. But it's the way that you cope. And she, of course, got herself into therapy and then also supplemented it with books. So I gave her a book that she needed to read that talks about grief day by day. So grieving each day and hopefully helping her to understand grief and then also understand how to grieve in her own way, because everybody grieves differently. Grief is also considered a mental health symptom. So a lot of people say, oh, I've never suffered from mental health. We've all been through some form of mental health symptom.
So
Okay.
do you have anything that you want to say, Tashi, in closing? How can people reach out to you? If they're interested in following you?
Okay. So my name on Instagram is Dr. Let me make sure. Listen, let me make sure of my name.
I can put it in here, type it in too.
I think it's Dr. Psych LCSW. Sorry, guys.
No, you're fine.
I'm so busy with work, and I try to be very effective when it comes to being a therapist. So I don't get to go on Instagram as much as I would want to. So Dr. Psych, DRPSYCH LCSW. That's my my IG. And my closing, listen, like I said before, with this whole situation that's going on pertaining to COVID, my strongest recommendation, like I said, 4 things. Remember 4 things. Establish a daily routine. That means shower, brush your teeth, put on your clean clothes for work. I know some people will say, no, I don't want to switch out of my pajamas. Switch out of your pajamas, put on that nice shirt, put on that nice pants, or put on that nice dress right?
Put on that red dress.
Yes, yes.
And them
No, but
high
it's
heels.
true. It's true. Take breaks. The biggest thing that you need to do is take breaks. We are working, a lot of us are working from home. So if you feel like after an hour, all right, I had a little bit too much and I've just dealt with that Zoom call, think about your mental health. Take a break. Make time for yourself to rest. Okay. And you should also, yes, I see Patrice said take breaks. Yes, that's true. Take breaks. If you feel like you need to take a nap during your lunch break, take a nap, right? Don't feel bad about having to take a nap. Maintain a healthy lifestyle, exercise, eat healthy, stay hydrated, and develop a sleep routine. Okay. Stay socially connected. Like I said before, reach out to friends and family members, play games on Zoom if you can, take a walk outside if you can with your mask on, create a self-care toolkit. So create a self-care toolkit for not only yourself, but also your kids, also your significant other, whether that's your wife or your husband, right? You can do talk therapy with a clergy, with your therapist. You could do executive coaching if you feel like therapy is not for you. And like I said before, you can also use your insurance depending on the executive coach. A lot of therapists, that's another thing to take in consideration. A lot of them will tell you, oh, well, I don't take insurance. You will experience that. I always ask them, is there a sliding fee scale? Right? Some therapists might say, well, I need to see your paycheck. Some people might not be comfortable with that. You can express that. I don't feel comfortable with sharing my pay scale, because of the fact I don't really know you. And that's how I am. I'll keep it like, I don't really know you, but is there a sliding fee scale of like $50, $60? You don't really want to tell them, but a lot of times I know for me, I'll say like, okay, well, I'll get like $50 for like the first 5 to 6 sessions because I want everybody to be able to have treatment. And with creating the self-care tool, so meditating, using guided imagery, engaging in a hobby, and implementing yoga. You guys don't know yoga on YouTube. I can't remember this lady's name, but yoga, it's the best thing. And when you do meditation and yoga, and especially if you're working from home, try to start off with meditation in the morning. Put meditation in the middle of the day and meditation right before you're going to sleep. You will realize how relaxed you are when you go to sleep. All right, Danielle.
So does anyone have any live questions before we just wanted to see maybe if someone might have a question they want to ask, not in the chat, but just want to ask, I don't know, personally?
Yes, Patrice. Patrice said, I use meditation on YouTube. Yes, listen, YouTube is your best friend.
Okay. Well, since no one has any questions, I want to thank Dr. Tashi. Thank you for talking about mental health. I feel like it's so important. We don't always have to wear this strong hat. We can, be vulnerable and, just tell people what we're feeling, what we're going through. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to seek help. And, a lot of times in the Black community, we feel like, if you have a therapist, then you're crazy. And that's not the case, because for anything, you're normal, because these are things that people go through in their life. These are normal things that people have to deal with stress. And you're not expected to be the person that has all the answers. So don't be afraid to reach out to someone if you need help. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight. And you have a great night.
You're welcome. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.